In 1997, Pascal Payet participated in the robbery of a Banque de France armored vehicle, which resulted in the death of one of the guards. On October 12, 2001, he escaped from a prison on a hijacked helicopter. In 2003, he orchestrated the escape of 3 of his fellow accomplices with the help of another hijacked helicopter. He was eventually caught and sentenced to 30 years in prison for the 1997 murder, 7 years for the 2003 escape, and another 6 years for his own escape in 2001. Payet became one of the most closely watched prisoners in France and was transferred to different prisons every few months. Despite these precautions, on July 14, 2007, 4 masked men hijacked another helicopter and facilitated the escape of Payet from a prison in Grasse. 2 months later, he was captured again in Mataró, Spain. His current whereabouts are a well-kept secret. June 6, 2015, Richard Matt, 48, and David Sweat, 34, escaped from the Clinton Correctional Facility in Dannemora, New York. Joyce Mitchell, a 51-year-old prison tailor shop worker, developed sexual relationships with both inmates, provided them with smuggled tools, asked them to kill her husband, and planned to flee with the violent pair to Mexico. Richard Matt and David Sweat used power tools to cut holes in the back of their adjacent cells, which led to a 6-story high catwalk that provided access to various pipes and tunnels. After cutting into a 2-foot wide pipe, they traveled 400 feet inside the pipe and escaped through a manhole in the town of Dannemora. Joyce Mitchell, who had planned to rendezvous with the pair and provide a getaway vehicle, was nowhere to be found. Police killed Matt on June 26, and Sweat was captured 2 days later. The mass escape of 76 Allied airmen from a Nazi POW camp in March 1944 remains one of history's most famous prison breaks. Although the German Luftwaffe designed the Stalag Luft III camp to be escape-proof, the audacious, real-life prison break immortalized in the 1963 movie The Great Escape proved otherwise. When the Nazis built the maximum security camp 100 miles southeast of Berlin to house Allied aviators captured in World War II, many of whom had made previous escapes, they took elaborate measures to prevent tunneling, such as raising prisoners' huts off the ground and burying microphones 9 feet underground along the camp's perimeter fencing. The Nazis, however, didn't account for the daring and ingenuity of the British. For the aviators, the penalty for being caught trying to escape, generally 10 days in solitary confinement under the rules of the Geneva Convention, was worth the risk. The secret operation was led and organized by Roger Bushell, a Royal Air Force pilot. In the spring of 1943, Bushell and over 600 prisoners of war began building 3 tunnels with the code names of Tom, Dick, and Harry. Working in claustrophobic conditions, diggers stripped to their long johns or took off all their clothes so that the bright golden sand wouldn't stain them and raised the suspicions of the German guards. The captives excavated at least 100 tons of sand, which they stuffed into concealed socks and discreetly sprinkled and raked into the soil of the small gardens tended by the prisoners. The Nazis eventually discovered the Tunnel Tom, and while the Nazis celebrated their discovery, however, they were unaware that work on the 2 other underground passages continued. Around 10:30 p.m. on the frigid, moonless night of March 24, 1944, British bomber pilot Johnny Bull slowly traversed the tunnel more than 30 feet below the oblivious Nazi guards and peeked his head out of the snowy ground beyond the camp's fence. Around 5 a.m., a German soldier on patrol nearly fell into the exit shaft and discovered the tunnel. The Nazis discovered that 76 prisoners had broken out. The Nazis mobilized a massive manhunt. Within 2 weeks, the Germans had recaptured 73 of the escapees. Only 3 men successfully fled to safety: 2 Norwegians who stowed away on a freighter to Sweden, and a Dutchman who made it to Gibraltar by rail and foot. A furious Adolf Hitler personally ordered the execution of 50 of the escapees as a warning to the other prisoners. In late 2010, the Mujahideen began work on a 1,000-foot tunnel in the city of Kandahar with the hopes of freeing hundreds of Taliban insurgents. The tunnel, which took 5 months to dig, bypassed government buildings, watchtowers, barriers topped with razor wire, and went through the concrete floor of an Afghan prison. On April 25, 2011, 480 prisoners crawled to freedom in less than 30 minutes. The Taliban had acquired keys prior to the escape, which were used to open the cells of their friends. On the other side of the tunnel, minibuses were waiting to drive the hundreds of escapees away from the heavily guarded area. It's likely that some of the prison guards were either bribed or politically motivated to facilitate the escape. The only thing more remarkable than constructing a 1,000-foot tunnel lined with a strong rubber ventilation tube is that nobody managed to stop it from happening. Choi Gap-bak is a 53-year-old man, a criminal with over 20 years behind bars, and a yoga expert. Choi first escaped custody 25 years ago by slipping through the bars of a bus that was carrying prisoners to jail. He was captured 2 days later. Choi decided to practice yoga during most of his 2 decades in and out of jail. On September 17, 2012, he was ready to pull off an even more remarkable escape. When the guards fell asleep, he covered his pillows with a blanket, making it appear that he was still in bed, and applied skin ointment over his torso. He then squeezed through the tiny food slot at the bottom of his cell and escaped the prison. He was apprehended 6 days later and placed in a cell with an even tinier food slot. It seems that yoga, for some, isn't just a popular way to exercise. During World War II, the Nazis would execute 10 prisoners for every person who attempted to escape their extermination camps. By 1943, rumors had begun to circulate that the Nazis were intending to close the camps and exterminate all of their prisoners. Leon Feldhendler and Alexander Pechersky, prisoners at Sobibor, decided that being killed while trying to escape was better than being murdered in a gas chamber. The plan was to have every prisoner attack at once, kill the SS officers, and hope that the Ukrainian guards would retreat. On October 14, 1943, 9 SS officers and 2 guards were isolated and killed. Unfortunately, a Ukrainian guard found one of the dead Germans and sounded the alarm. Around half of the 400 prisoners attempting to flee were shot and killed. The Germans then exterminated the remaining 300 prisoners and closed the camp. Only 58 of the escapees survived the war. Frank Abagnale is the notorious con man portrayed by Leonardo DiCaprio in the film Catch Me If You Can. Abagnale committed bank fraud and successfully impersonated pilots, lawyers, and doctors as a means of avoiding detection and inevitable imprisonment. In 1969, an Air France flight attendant recognized him and informed the police. He spent 6 months each in French and Swedish prisons before being extradited to America. On arrival at the JFK airport, Abagnale escaped the plane and fled to Canada, but he was quickly apprehended. In 1971, Abagnale escaped a federal prison in Atlanta, Georgia. One of Abagnale's friends supplied him with a fake prison inspector card and a forged FBI business card. He then convinced the guards that he was an undercover prison inspector who desperately needed to contact the FBI. Abagnale called his friend, walked out of the prison, got into a car, and drove away.